The sun was rising slowly over the tall mountains when a young man named Rafi packed his small bag and tightened his boots. He loved hiking alone in the high mountains. The silence, the wind, and the smell of fresh pine trees always made him feel free. Rafi had explored many trails before, but this time he wanted something different. He had heard from an old shepherd about a strange place high up in the North Range, where no one usually went. The shepherd said that something metal was hidden near the top, shining like silver in the sunlight. Rafi thought it might be an old plane or a strange rock. He wanted to find out. Rafi started his hike early in the morning. The trail was narrow and the air was cold. He carried a small camera, some food, and a water bottle. Birds were singing in the trees and the path was covered with green moss. After a few hours of walking, he reached a point where the forest became thinner. Rocks started to appear and the ground became steeper. The mountain looked silent, as if it was hiding something. He stopped near a small stream to rest. The water was clear and cold. As he drank, he looked up at the peaks. There was one mountain taller than the rest with a strange shape near the top. It looked almost like a large shadow of a man-made object. His curiosity grew stronger. He decided to climb that peak, even if it took him all day. As he moved higher, the wind became stronger. He wrapped his jacket tightly and kept walking. Every step made his legs ache, but he did not stop. The mountain was covered with fog, and the path disappeared at times. He had to use his stick to check the ground ahead. Once he slipped on a rock and almost fell down, but he caught a branch just in time. He laughed at himself, feeling both scared and excited. When the sun was high above, Rafi finally reached a small flat area near the peak. The air was thin, and his breath came out in clouds. He looked around and saw something strange. There were deep marks on the ground, like heavy tracks pressed into the soil long ago. They were wide and had a pattern of metal chains. Rafi bent down to touch them. The marks were old but still clear. He wondered what could make such tracks on a place like this. He followed the tracks slowly. They led toward a steep ridge covered in grass and snow. When he climbed over it, his eyes widened in shock. There, half buried in the mountain soil, stood a large metal machine. It was a tank, old and rusted, its barrel pointing toward the sky. The surface was covered in moss and dirt. One side was broken, and a few birds had built nests inside. Rafi froze for a moment. His heart beat fast. What was a tank doing here, on a mountain peak where no road existed? He walked closer carefully. The metal was cold when he touched it. The symbols painted on the side were faded, but he could still see a few letters in a language he did not know. The tank looked like it had been here for many years. He circled around it, taking pictures with his camera. The more he looked, the more questions filled his mind. How did it get here? There were no tire marks nearby, only old tracks leading from nowhere. The ground was rocky, and no vehicle could have climbed this high. He found an open hatch on the side. The door was stuck, but after pushing hard, it opened slightly. Inside, the air smelled of metal and dust. He took out a small flashlight and shone it in. The interior was dark, filled with rust and old wires. But there was something else. On the seat inside, there was a small box made of metal, still shining. Rafi hesitated for a moment, then reached in and took it out. The box was heavy and locked. There were no keys, only a small dial on the top. It looked like a code lock. He placed it in his bag, thinking he would try to open it later. When he came out of the tank, he noticed something strange again. Near the ground under the snow, he saw a piece of cloth. He pulled it out carefully. It was a small flag, torn and faded. The color was almost gone, but he could see the symbol of a star on it. He did not recognize it. The wind howled around him, and a strange feeling filled his heart. The mountain seemed to whisper as if warning him. He felt both thrilled and uneasy. Maybe this place was not meant to be found. Rafi sat down near a rock, looking at the tank again. He imagined the people who might have driven it here. Soldiers, perhaps, in some forgotten war. Maybe they had lost their way. Maybe something had happened that no one knew about. As he rested, he noticed something shining on the ground near the back of the tank. He walked closer and found a small metal tag half buried in the soil. He picked it up and brushed the dirt away. There were numbers engraved on it, and below them a single word, Project Helios. The name sent a chill through his body. It sounded like something secret, something important. He looked around again. The fog was getting thicker, and the sun was beginning to set. He decided to make camp nearby and spend the night there. Maybe in the morning he could explore more and find clues about this strange place. He set up his small tent a few meters away from the tank. As night fell, the mountain became silent. Only the sound of wind echoed around. He made a small fire and ate a little food. His mind was still filled with thoughts about what he had found. He took out the metal box again and studied it in the firelight. The lock looked simple, but it was not. He turned the dial a few times, trying random numbers, but nothing happened. He placed the box beside him and looked at the tank once more. In the light of the fire, its dark shape looked like a sleeping beast. The barrel pointed toward the stars. It seemed alive, almost watching him. As Rafi prepared to sleep, he heard a sound. It was faint, like metal moving. He sat up quickly, his heart beating fast. The sound came again from inside the tank. It was slow, like something shifting. He grabbed his flashlight and aimed it at the open hatch. The light showed nothing but darkness. The wind blew harder, and he told himself it was just the metal creaking from the cold. He lay down again, but he could not sleep. The strange sound echoed in his ears. Somewhere inside that old machine, something seemed to move. The fire burned low and the night grew colder. Rafi pulled his blanket close and stared at the tank one last time before closing his eyes. He did not know that the next morning, what he would discover near that machine would change everything he believed about the world. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the mountain in shades of gold and red. Rafi opened his eyes and stretched his arms. The air was cold and fresh, and thin clouds floated below him. For a moment he almost forgot where he was. Then he turned his head and saw the tank. It stood there quietly, half covered in mist, its rusted shell glowing faintly in the morning light. The memory of the strange sounds from last night came back to him. He got up quickly and checked around his tent. Everything was the same. Nothing had been touched. The ground near the tank showed no new tracks. Maybe it was just the wind, he told himself. Still, his heart felt heavy. He walked closer to the tank, shining his flashlight inside once more. The air inside was still and cold. Nothing had moved, but there was something odd about the floor. When he looked carefully, he noticed new scratches on the metal floor as if something had been dragged. The marks were fresh, not covered in dust. He followed them to a small corner under the seat. There was a narrow gap, almost hidden. He reached inside and pulled out a small piece of folded paper. It was old and yellow, but still readable. Rafi unfolded it carefully. On the paper were handwritten words in neat letters. It looked like a note written long ago. It said, "If you find this, do not open the box on the mountain. Take it down to the valley. Project Helios must stay buried until the right time." His hands shook as he read it again. Who wrote it? And what was Project Helios? The words "must stay buried" made him uneasy. He took the metal box from his bag and stared at it. It looked harmless, yet now it seemed dangerous. He placed the box on a flat rock and studied the lock again. The dial had 3 numbers. Maybe the note's writer had hidden the key somewhere. Rafi began to search around the tank for clues. Under the barrel, behind the tracks, near the broken parts, and he searched everywhere. After a while, he noticed something under a pile of stones near the left track. It was another metal tag, smaller than the first one, and it had 3 numbers on it, 7 and 14. His heart beat faster. Could it be the code? He ran back to the rock, turned the dial to 7, then 1, then 4. For a moment, nothing happened. Then there was a faint click. The box opened. Inside was a small device covered in glass, like a round crystal disc. Under it were strange symbols and a red button in the center. It did not look like a bomb, but it also did not look like anything he had seen before. There was also a folded piece of paper inside. He took it out and opened it. It had words written in the same neat handwriting as the first note. The paper said, "The sun brings life, but it can also bring death. Helios controls both. Use it only when the sky burns." Rafi read the words again and again. They made no sense. What did the sky burns mean? He looked at the glass disc. When he held it toward the sun, it reflected light in a strange way. The reflection formed a pattern on the rock, almost like a circle with lines. It reminded him of an ancient symbol he once saw in a museum. He placed the disc back in the box carefully. A part of him wanted to take it to the town and show it to someone who could understand it. But another part told him that maybe the note was right. Maybe it should stay buried. He was deep in thought when he noticed something strange on the horizon. Far away, in the sky above the opposite mountain range, he saw a flash of light. It was not lightning. The sky was clear. It looked like a pulse, a quick, bright glow that disappeared at once. He frowned. It came from the direction of the valley below. He decided to leave soon. The mountain felt different now, as if it was alive. The silence was heavier than before. Even the birds had gone quiet. He packed his things, kept the box inside his bag, and began his way down the slope. The descent was difficult. The rocks were loose and the wind was strong. He had to move slowly. Every few steps he stopped to catch his breath. But something else made him stop again. He heard a deep metallic sound, faint but clear. It was coming from behind. He turned around. The tank was still in its place, but a thin line of smoke was rising from its side. He froze. The tank had been silent for decades, yet now something was burning inside it. He ran back to it, unsure what he would find. When he reached it, the smoke had stopped, but the metal was warm to the touch. Inside, he saw that the wires had started to glow slightly. The light came from the lower part, near the seat where the note had been hidden. He grabbed his camera and took a photo. The glow lasted only a few seconds, then faded away. Rafi stepped back, breathing heavily. It was impossible. Machines that old could not power themselves. There was no battery, no fuel, nothing. Yet it had come alive for a moment. He felt an urge to leave the mountain at once. He began walking down again, faster this time. The fog had thickened and the sunlight was weaker. As he moved, he thought he heard footsteps behind him. But when he turned, there was no one. Only the echo of his own boots. After an hour, he reached the tree line and felt safer. The forest was quiet but not empty. Birds had returned and the wind was softer. He found a small clearing and sat down to rest. He took the box out again, looking at it carefully. He could still feel warmth coming from inside, even though the air was cold. Rafi decided he would not open it again. He would take it to the small-town museum where his friend Kamal worked. Kamal knew a lot about history and strange artifacts. Maybe he could help. By the time Rafi reached the lower trails, the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and pink and the valley below looked peaceful. But when he looked back at the mountain, he noticed something that made him stop. The peak where the tank stood was glowing faintly, like light from within the rock itself. It was not sunlight, Mount. It was blue, soft and steady. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. The mountain was not sleeping anymore. Something had awakened. He hurried down the path until night came. He reached a small hut used by shepherds and decided to rest there. He lit a small fire and sat beside it, thinking about what had happened. The box lay on his lap, quiet and heavy. He wondered if it was safe to carry it. Suddenly, a sound came from outside. It was like static noise, soft but strange. He stood up, listening carefully. The sound came from his bag. He opened it and saw that the box had started to hum faintly. The glass disc inside was glowing with pale light. The same symbol he saw reflected earlier now appeared on the surface, shining brighter with every second. Rafi took a step back. He felt both scared and curious. The box was doing something on its own. The sound grew a little louder and then suddenly it stopped. The light vanished. Everything was silent again. He sat down slowly, his heart still beating fast. He knew this was no normal object. Whatever Project Helios was, it was still active. The tank on the mountain, the strange notes, the smoke, all of it was connected. As he tried to rest, he thought of one thing he had read once about ancient experiments during forgotten wars. Some were meant to use sunlight as energy weapons, but most were abandoned. Could this be one of them? Before sleeping, he took one last look at the box. The metal was still warm. In the corner of his mind, a thought formed. Maybe someone would come looking for it. He did not know that far above, on the same peak, the rusted tank had started to move slightly again. A faint red light appeared inside its hollow eyes, waiting for the dawn. The next morning, the valley was filled with fog. The sky was pale gray and the air smelled of wet soil. Rafi woke up early, though he had barely slept. His mind kept returning to the strange glow of the box and the light on the mountain. He sat beside the fire for a while, staring at the metal box resting in front of him. It looked quiet again, but he no longer trusted its silence. He packed his things carefully and started walking down toward the small town. The trail was slippery after the night's mist, but Rafi moved fast. His goal was clear now. He needed to show the box to Kamal, the museum keeper. Kamal had studied old military devices and history of the mountain region. If anyone could understand this mystery, it was him. By noon, Rafi reached the town. It was a small place with stone houses, narrow streets, and kind people. Everyone knew each other. He went straight to the museum near the center. The old building was quiet, filled with old tools, maps, and photos of the mountains. Kamal was sitting near a desk reading a book. When he saw Rafi, he smiled. "You look like you have seen a ghost," Kamal said with a laugh. Rafi smiled weakly and placed the box on the table. "Not a ghost, but something strange. You need to see this." Kamal leaned forward. His smile faded when he saw the box. He touched it carefully and frowned. "Where did you get this?" Rafi told him everything. About the hike, the tank, the notes, the smoke, and the glowing light. Kamal listened quietly, not interrupting. When Rafi finished, Kamal sat back, thinking deeply. "I have heard the name Helios before," Kamal said slowly. "A few years ago, an old army record mentioned something called Project Helios. It was a secret experiment from the war years. They were trying to create a weapon that used sunlight as energy, but the project was abandoned after a disaster. No one knew what happened. Many people said the equipment was destroyed in the mountains." Rafi's eyes widened. "So that tank might be from that project?" Kamal nodded. "It could be. If what you saw is real, you found something no one has seen for decades. But this is dangerous. The people who made this device were not playing with simple machines. If it can still produce energy, it might not be safe to keep." Rafi looked at the box. It was quiet again, but he remembered how it had glowed in the night. "I thought the same thing," he said. "But when I opened it, there was a disc inside. It seemed to react to light. Maybe it still works somehow." Kamal opened a drawer and pulled out a small protective case. "Let me keep it here for a while. I will check some records and maybe contact the research team in the capital. They might know more," Rafi agreed. He felt lighter as Kamal locked the box in the case and placed it in a steel cupboard. But deep inside, he still felt uneasy. It was as if the box did not want to be locked away. That evening, Rafi stayed in the town's small inn. He planned to rest for one night and return home the next day. But his peace did not last long. Late at night, he woke up to loud knocks on his door. When he opened it, Kamal stood there, pale and sweating. "Rafi, you need to come now," he said. "Something is happening at the museum." They ran through the dark streets. The town was quiet, but a strange low humming sound filled the air. When they reached the museum, Rafi saw light coming from inside the building. The windows glowed with a faint golden color. They entered quickly. The air was warm and smelled like metal. The sound was coming from the steel cupboard where the box was kept. The cupboard door was shaking slightly. Kamal unlocked it carefully, and when he opened it, both men stepped back. The box was glowing again, brighter than before. The glass disc inside was spinning slowly, though no one had touched it. The pattern of light reflected on the walls, forming a circle with strange lines and symbols. It was like a map of the sky. Kamal whispered, "It is reacting to something. Maybe sunlight, maybe heat." Rafi looked out the window. The moon was hidden behind clouds, but far above the mountain, a bright red flash appeared again, the same one he had seen before. The disc inside the box glowed stronger when the flash came. Without warning, the light stopped. The box went dark again. The humming faded. Kamal exhaled slowly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "This thing is not normal," he said. "We cannot keep it here. If it is connected to that mountain, it could be sending signals or receiving them. We must take it back." Rafi looked confused. "Back to the mountain?" "Yes," Kamal said. "If the tank was made to hold this, then maybe it is the only place where it is safe. We need to return it before it causes trouble." The next morning, they packed quickly. Kamal brought some tools and a small metal container to carry the box safely. They began their climb as soon as the sun rose. The trail was harder this time. The wind was stronger and dark clouds gathered above. The mountain seemed restless. Every sound echoed like a whisper. As they moved higher, they saw deep marks in the soil, the same tracks Rafi had seen before. But now, some looked fresh, as if something heavy had moved again. When they reached the area near the peak, Rafi stopped. The place looked different. The tank was still there, but the ground around it had changed. The soil was blackened, and there were cracks on the rocks. The air smelled faintly of smoke. Kamal stared at the tank. "It looks like it came alive again," he said quietly. They approached slowly. The barrel of the tank was now tilted slightly down and faint steam rose from the openings. When Rafi touched the side, the metal was warm. They placed the box on the ground near the tank. Kamal knelt down and studied the strange marks on the soil. "This place is not natural," he said. "The rocks have melted here. It means there was intense heat. Maybe the project used sunlight to create that power." Rafi took a step back. "If the tank was part of that project, what if it can still use that energy?" Before Kamal could answer, the ground trembled slightly. The light inside the tank flickered again. The hatch on top opened by itself, releasing a puff of steam. Both men jumped back. From inside the tank, a faint sound came. Not words, but a repeating signal like a code. Kamal pulled out a small recorder and held it near the sound. "It's sending something," he said. "Morse code, maybe." Rafi listened closely. The signal repeated in a steady rhythm. After a few moments, Kamal wrote down the pattern. When he decoded it, his eyes widened. It said, "Activate Helios." Rafi felt his stomach twist. What does that mean? Before Kamal could answer, the sunlight broke through the clouds. The beam hit the glass disc inside the open box. The disc glowed bright gold. The tank's barrel turned slowly toward the sun as if it was alive. A beam of light formed at its tip, thin and sharp. Kamal shouted, "Move away!" They ran behind a rock just in time. A flash of light shot out from the barrel toward the sky, cutting through the air like fire. The sound was deafening. When it stopped, silence returned, broken only by the wind. The two men looked at each other in shock. The tank was now smoking. Its lights faded again. Kamal spoke softly. "Now I understand. Helios was meant to use sunlight as a weapon, but maybe they stopped it because it was too powerful." Rafi nodded slowly. "And now we woke it up again." They stood in silence for a while, unsure what to do next. The box was still warm and the disc inside had cracks now. The project that had been forgotten for decades had just come back to life. As they prepared to leave, Rafi looked back at the tank one last time. The glow had faded, but a faint hum still came from within. He could not shake the feeling that it was waiting for something. Neither of them knew that far away, in the valley below, strange readings were being detected by scientists. The energy spike from the mountain had already been noticed, and soon, people would start asking questions. The morning after the blast, the mountain was silent again. The wind was cold and clouds moved slowly across the peaks. Rafi and Kamal sat near the tank, both still shaken from what they had seen. The metal beast looked lifeless now, but its surface was still warm. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. The box that had once glowed so brightly now lay on the ground, its glass disc cracked in half. Kamal picked up the broken piece carefully. "The energy release was real," he said quietly. "This machine still works somehow. It used the sunlight as power. Maybe it was built to test how much energy the sun could produce through that crystal." Rafi looked at the tank. But why hide it up here? Why not in a base or a lab? Kamal thought for a moment. Maybe it was too dangerous, or maybe the people who made it wanted to keep it secret. The higher it was placed, the closer it was to sunlight. This mountain peak was the perfect place. The two men walked around the tank again, searching for clues. Near the back, they found something new. The soil had shifted from the blast, revealing a metal plate under the rocks. It had markings on it covered with dust and mud. Kamal wiped it clean with his sleeve. On it were words written in a faded language and a date. March 12, 1974. Under it was a short message. "Helios Prototype 1, awaiting final command." Kamal's eyes widened. This means the machine was never shut down. It was waiting all these years for someone to start it again. Rafi felt a chill. Then when I found it, I must have activated it by mistake. The light, the smoke, the signal. It was all connected. The thought made him uneasy. The mountain had slept for decades, and now he had disturbed it. They packed the cracked disc back into the box and decided to take more pictures before leaving. Kamal wanted to send them to his friend in the capital who studied old technology. As they prepared to go, Rafi noticed something strange again. On the side of the tank, near the base, The metal was slowly moving. It looked like thin lines were forming. Not scratches, but glowing patterns. He called Kamal over. Together they watched as the symbols began to appear one by one, glowing faintly in golden color. They were not letters, but strange geometric shapes, like codes or maps. "It is activating again," Kamal said in a low voice, "but this time it is different. Maybe the system is trying to repair itself." Rafi stepped back. "We should leave before something else happens." But before they could move, a soft vibration began under their feet. The tank made a deep humming sound. Dust fell from the rocks around them. The barrel moved slowly upward, pointing once more toward the sky. The sound grew louder, steady, and rhythmic. Kamal grabbed his recorder and started to note everything. "It is not attacking, it is charging. But there is no sunlight now. The sky is full of clouds. How can it charge?" Rafi looked up. The sky was gray, but above the clouds there was a faint, golden glow spreading wider every second. The air around them began to shimmer slightly, as if the light was bending. Suddenly a beam of light broke through the clouds and hit the tank directly. The barrel glowed white and the ground trembled. Kamal shouted for Rafi to move, and they both ran behind a large rock. The tank released another blinding beam, this time straight into the clouds. When it stopped, there was silence again, but the clouds above had formed a perfect circular hole, showing clear blue sky in the center. Sunlight poured through it like a spotlight. Kamal stared in disbelief. That machine just created a hole in the clouds using pure energy. Rafi's heart was pounding. "It feels like it is trying to send a signal, not fire a weapon." Kamal nodded. "Yes. Maybe the message was never meant for people on the ground. Maybe it was meant for someone above." The idea made Rafi's skin crawl. "You mean it was trying to reach space?" Kamal did not answer, but the thought was clear in both their minds. Project Helios might not have been just a weapon. It might have been a communication device, or something even more advanced. They watched for a long time, but the machine became silent once more. Kamal placed his recorder and notes inside his bag. "We cannot leave this here for others to find," he said. "We must report it before someone gets hurt, but not to the military. They might try to use it again." Rafi agreed. "We should tell scientists first, people who study energy or space signals. They might understand." As they began their journey down the mountain, a soft glow appeared again on the tank's surface, like a pulse. Once, twice, then it faded. It was as if the machine was saying goodbye or perhaps waiting for their return. The path down was difficult and fog began to rise again. The two men moved quickly, afraid the weather would turn worse. Halfway down, they stopped to rest near a large rock. Kamal pulled out his small radio device and tried to contact the local weather station, but when he turned it on, static filled the air. Then, out of the noise, a strange repeating tone appeared. Short, long, short, short. Kamal frowned. "That is Morse code again, but it is not coming from my device, it is coming from the mountain." They listened carefully. The pattern was steady. Kamal wrote it down. When he decoded it, the message was clear. "Helios will rise." Rafi's heart raced. What does that mean? Is it saying it will start again? Kamal shook his head slowly. Maybe the project was designed to collect sunlight energy over time and release it. But if it is sending signals on its own, it might be more than a machine. It might have developed some kind of intelligence. The thought was terrifying. They looked back at the peak, now hidden in fog. The mountain seemed alive, glowing faintly beneath the clouds. They hurried down, without rest. By the time they reached the town, the sun was setting. The people in the streets looked uneasy. The air felt heavy and a faint humming could be heard from far away. At the museum, Kamal connected his recorder to an old computer and played the signal he had captured. The sound filled the room. Deep, steady pulses that repeated endlessly. When the program converted the signal into a visual graph, it showed a pattern that looked like the same circular map Rafi had seen on the wall of the museum earlier. the same symbol the disk had made when it reflected sunlight. "This is not just random code," Kamal said. "It is a message pattern. Someone designed it." Rafi sat silently watching the screen. "And now it is awake again. If it is sending signals, maybe something will answer." The words hung heavy in the air. They both knew what that meant. That night, the town lost power. The lights went out one by one until everything was dark. People came out of their houses, confused and scared. In the distance, over the mountains, a beam of golden light rose slowly into the sky, brighter and taller than before. It pierced the clouds and reached far beyond sight. The air was filled with a low humming sound that made the ground vibrate. Kamal and Rafi stood outside the museum, staring at the sky. The beam shimmered for a few minutes and then disappeared, leaving only stars behind. "What if it was not a signal to humans?" Rafi said quietly. Kamal looked at him, his face pale. "Then something else might have received it." The next morning, reports spread across nearby villages. People said they saw strange lights in the night sky, moving fast, forming circles above the mountain. Others said they felt tremors in the ground. Rafi and Kamal decided they had to go back one last time. Whatever project Helios was doing, it was not finished yet. They packed food, water, and cameras. As they prepared to leave, Rafi looked up at the mountain peak shining faintly in the distance. The tank waited there, silent but alive, holding secrets that the world had forgotten. Neither man spoke during the walk. Both knew that what they would find next might change everything. Not just for them, but for everyone. The next morning, the mountain was silent again. The storm had passed and sunlight touched the metal of the old tank, making it shine faintly among the rocks. Amir woke up inside the small cabin near the site. His body was sore, and his mind was heavy. He had spent the whole night thinking about what he had learned. The words of the mysterious man still echoed in his mind. The man had said that the tank was part of an old experiment, one that was never meant to be found. Amir did not know if it was true or not, but he could not shake the feeling that the mountain itself was hiding something far deeper than a forgotten weapon. He stepped outside and looked up at the peak. The path that led to the tank was now partly blocked by fallen rocks, as if nature itself wanted to cover the secret again. Birds were flying overhead, and the cold air felt sharper than before. Amir knew he had to go back to the tank one last time. When he reached it, the tank looked the same, but there was a strange calm around it. The wind was still, and even the usual mountain sounds seemed gone. He walked closer and touched the cold steel. It felt different this time, as if it was not just metal but something alive with memory. He walked around and saw the open hatch he had used earlier. He climbed inside again, slowly, carefully. The air was musty and filled with dust. His flashlight cut through the dark. Inside, he noticed something he had missed before. Behind the seat of the driver, there was a small steel box. It was bolted into the wall and covered in dirt. Amir wiped it clean and saw a faded symbol, a circle with a mountain shape inside it. He had seen that same symbol before, on an old military document shown by the stranger. His heartbeat quickened. He used his small knife to break the rusted lock and open the box. Inside were several old papers, yellow and fragile. The first one was a logbook. It mentioned the tank number, the names of the crew, and a date that made Amir freeze, July 1979. The log described an experimental mission to test new communication equipment that could send signals through solid rock. The tank had been chosen as a mobile base for the test. But then the last entry changed everything. The final page read, "We have detected something beneath the mountain. The signal is strong, almost like a heartbeat. Orders say to stop the test and seal the site. But we cannot leave. The tank has lost power. We hear noises outside. This will be our last message." Amir stared at the page for a long time. Beneath the mountain. A heartbeat. He suddenly remembered the strange, pulsing vibration he had felt through the ground 2 nights ago, when lightning had struck the peak. It was not thunder. It was something else. He felt a chill move down his spine. He stepped out of the tank and looked at the ground. The rocks near the base were cracked, and small lines of steam were escaping. It was faint, but real. He knelt and touched the ground. It was warm. Too warm for a cold mountain morning. Amir stood up and looked around. There was a faint sound in the distance, like the hum of machinery buried deep under the earth. It grew louder for a moment, then faded away. He backed away slowly. The thought crossed his mind. What if the experiment had not ended? What if the machine they built underground was still running after all these years? He decided to take the documents and leave the mountain. But before he could move far, he noticed movement at the tree line. The same man who had warned him earlier was standing there again, wearing the same dark coat. "You found the box," the man said calmly. "Yes," Amir replied. "What is under this mountain?" The man sighed. "You are not supposed to know. The tank was left here as a marker to remind us of what we buried. It was not a machine we tested, it was something we found. The signal was never ours. It came from below." Amir's heart raced. "You mean there is something alive down there?" The man did not answer. He looked at the tank, then at the steaming cracks. "Leave now. The mountain is waking again. It happens every few decades. You must not be here when it opens." Amir wanted to ask more, but the man turned and started walking down the slope. Then the ground shook slightly and a low rumble filled the air. The rocks trembled and the sound felt almost like breathing, deep, slow, and alive. Amir grabbed his bag and started running after the man. Behind him, the tank shook and tilted slightly as the ground under it cracked further. Dust rose in the air and a faint red glow appeared from the fissures. They both ran until they reached the lower side of the ridge. From there, Amir turned back one last time. The tank was still visible, half buried, glowing faintly from the light coming through the cracks. It looked like an eye closing again, going back to sleep. The man stopped and looked at Amir. "Forget what you saw. The mountain keeps its own secrets. If you tell anyone, they will not believe you. But remember this, do not come back." Then the man walked away into the forest, leaving Amir alone. Amir stood there for a long time, breathing hard, staring at the peak. The glow slowly faded and the mountain went quiet once more. When he finally returned to the town, he gave the logbook and papers to a local historian, telling only half the truth. He said he found them near an old wreck. The historian promised to store them safely, but Amir never spoke again about the tank or the strange heat beneath the rocks. Years passed. The story of the tank became a rumor among hikers. Some said it was gone, buried by another landslide. Others said on cold nights when the wind was quiet, they could still see a faint red light shining from the peak. Amir grew older, but he never forgot the feeling of the ground pulsing under his feet. Sometimes, late at night, he could still hear that deep hum in his dreams, as if the mountain was whispering his name. And somewhere high above, under the snow and stone, the old tank rested, silent, waiting, guarding the secret that the earth itself refused to give up.